So as I mentioned before I started the recording, we're going to veer off the map just a little bit because I want to talk about creating a graphical user interface, which is something with buttons and labels and entry fields, things like that. We could put checkboxes in it or sliders. There's also each thing that I mentioned is known as a widget. But we're not going to cover checkboxes and sliders and putting pictures on the screen and stuff like that. We're going to do an elementary user interface, maybe something like a password field. Oh, and by the way, I want to Google up something really fast. See if the name of the library we're going to use, the name of the library that we're going to import up at the top is called tkinter. Enter spelled I-N-T-E-R rather than E-N-T-E-R. And since what I want us to build is a password login screen, you know how when you type in text for the password, it puts dots there or something like that? I'm wondering if there's an easy way to do that. Show equals. I wonder if it's that easy. We'll give that a shot. We'll give that a shot, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. Yeah, somebody will looking over your shoulder will be able to see your password. That's all right. So I think we're on lecture V. All right, so first let's do a user interface using the tkinter library. So we're going to bring it in, and in the past we've always done import turtle, import random, stuff like that. We're going to use a slightly different syntax. Let me give you an example of why we're going to use a slightly different syntax. We have done this. You don't have to type this. I'm going to delete it immediately or put it in comments or something. We've done that, and then if we wanted a random number, we did random.randint, and we typed in a first and last number like that. That's how we did that. We could have done it like this, and maybe it makes the code look a little bit cleaner. It certainly does using tkinter. From random import randint, like that. And then when we wanted to use that function, we just call it like that, right? So at the expense of making this look a little bit longer, the import statement look a little bit longer, the random int function looks shorter, right? We don't have to prefix it with turtle dot. Same thing for the turtle class. From turtle import star. The asterisk just means import everything, not just one function, but all the functions in that library. And then instead of doing t is equal to turtle.turtle, we can just do t is equal to capital T turtle like that, right? Save us from having to add turtle dot in front of everything. Now the word tkinter we use so much in this example that I don't want to have to type it every time. So now what I'm going to do is, rather than type import tkinter, we're going to do from tkinter import asterisk. But there's a glitch in that import star. It leaves out one function which is important to us, which is called a message box. What is the message box? It's when you pop up like a yes/no dialog on the screen, right? Or an information button with an OK, right? That kind of thing. So we need to add one more from tkinter import message box. Now it's crazy to have to do both of them, and I haven't Googled to see why it takes a separate import to bring the message box class in. But I'm willing to live with the fact that we have to do it. Just a little quirk. All right. So this is going to take a lot of typing to create our user interface. I'm going to try to minimize it so that it's not 10,000 lines of code, because I want us to go on to use arrays a little bit more. First thing we need to do is create what's known as a window. And the way we do that is window equals TK parentheses in parentheses. And then we have to create a frame. The frame goes in the window. We don't see the frame, but it's what we attach all of our buttons to. Frame is equal to capital F, frame, parentheses, window. We have to say what window we're attaching our frame to. All right, now we're going to create like some labels on the left that say first name, or we're going to create a label that says first name, a label that says last name, and we're going to have some entry boxes where they can type it in. Let me check something. Make sure I get this exactly right, so we don't have to do much retyping. Okay? I'm going to do this a little bit simpler than what I was planning, which is to have things set to the left and things set to the right. Instead, I'm just going to put one on top of the other because that's easiest. All right, we need to make some labels. L1, just for label, equals label, parentheses, and we have to attach it to our frame, comma, and then we need to put what's in our label. What's going to be displayed on the screen? Text equals, quote, first name, end quote, in parentheses. Now, before these things will show up, we have to do what's known as packing. I guess creating a label isn't good enough. You got to pack it before you can take it on the trip. I don't have a really good simile, a really good metaphor for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do frame.pack, parentheses in parentheses. We're going to do L1.pack, parentheses in parentheses. And now when we run it, we get our little window. It's kind of squishy because packing packs it in a minimum amount of space. What if we want more space than that? We might not want a minimum amount of space. We will add some padding in a moment. Or actually, we could do it right here. We're sitting at the point where we could add some padding. And you do that with named parameters. Pad x equals, how many pixels do we want around it? 20 pixels on the x sides, which are horizontal. And then pad y equals 20. Now when we run it, you know, there's a little bit of space around it. Looks a little bit better. I am real tempted to go ahead and do what I wanted to do, where we had a left and a right thing and a left and a right thing. It's going to look so much better. The only thing is we're going to have to create a couple of more frames. I guess we can go back and modify it. So after our label, we need to create an entry field where they're going to type in their first name. So E1 is equal to entry, and we're going to attach it to our frame. And since we created a new object, we have to pack it. E1.pack. Every new widget we create, we have to pack. All right, so first name, and then there's a place to type. And we want a last name, and we want a button. Oh, bless you. I'm going to go, I don't know whether to delete spaces or not. To get these things to show up on the left and on the right, we have to add a parameter to the pack command. So the label is going to go on the left. So we're going to do side equals, all caps, left. And then on e1.pack, we're going to do side equals right. That looks a little bit better. I'm digging it. But if we want to put things underneath it, now we're going to have to add some, we're going to have to add a second frame. And then we're going to have to add a third frame. And it's going to look better than it sounds. But let's just roll with it. What we got to do here is we're going to have to create this same series of stuff here. I think I'm going to add a little block here and then say create top line of window. And we're going to have 3 lines, but the last line is just going to have a button. And then create middle of window, middle line of window, middle row. It's going to look awfully the same, except it's going to say like frame 2 is equal to frame. And we're going to attach everything to frame 2. I put that in the wrong place. No, it's okay because we haven't created L2 and E2, so it's in a good place. Frame 2 equals, and it's going to look just like this, frame attached to window, frame parentheses window. L2 equals capital L label. That was a capital F there if I didn't say it. Capital L label, attach it to frame 2, comma, text equals last name, end quote, in parentheses. And then now we need our entry field. And don't worry, I'll pause and help fix syntax errors in just a little bit. E2 equals, except it's not a label, it's an entry. E2 equals entry, frame 2. I think I'm going to remove that blank line there. I think that's okay. Now we need to pack everything in this one as well. So it's going to look just like this stuff here. Frame, may as well put a blank line there. Frame 2.pack. You know, I could have just copied and pasted some stuff. Pad X equals 20, comma, pad Y equals 20. It stands for padding. And we need to pack L2 and E2. L2.pack, parentheses in parentheses, E2.pack, parentheses in parentheses. And the very last line needs to be a call to window.main loop. What that does is it sits there and makes the shell wait until the window is closed. So window.main loop, parentheses in parentheses, like that. All right, now I'm going to run it. Okay, I forgot something, and my last name isn't set left and right like my first name is. How am I going to fix that? Somebody tell me what I did wrong, or I left something out. It's not like exactly wrong, but I left something out. I want the last name to be on the left and the entry field to be on the right. So what do I need to do to fix that? Yep, side equals left here, side equals right there. Side equals left, whoops, all caps left. Side equals left. Side equals right. I don't know why all of a sudden I wanted to put spaces where I wasn't before. Being unnecessarily picky now. Okay. I'm not sure I'm digging the padding so much. I think I'm going to remove all that padding. I think that that's making it kind of look lame. So I'm going to remove the pad X equals 20, pad Y equals 20 from both of them. Maybe a little bit of padding would have been okay, like 2 or 3 pixels. So I'm going to hit undo 4 times. And just maybe change it to like pad X equals 2, pad Y is equal to 2. Just some space around it. Right, you can tweak these things endlessly to make them look good. That's a little bit better. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create one more frame and we're going to add a button underneath it, and the button's just going to say log in. This little TK up here is kind of lame. We could probably set a title for our window, like login screen. All right, I want to stop here and help people with typos. So before our main loop, we're going to tack one more thing on, create bottom line of window. Frame 3 equals capital F R, or lowercase frame, parentheses window. Now this is going to only have one object in it. So we can just do button, all lowercase, equals uppercase B, button, parentheses. We got to attach it to frame 3, so parentheses frame 3, and we need to set its text. Text equals, quote, log in, end quote, and then close parentheses. And there's one more thing we got to add to the button, which I forgot to add. We're going to have to add a function name. We're going to have to create that function. We may scroll all the way up to the top and create that function. For now, let's just make it command equals login. And we haven't defined a login function yet, so it's probably not going to compile. But we'll get there. I wonder if it would compile. No, login is not defined. That's not a surprise. That's not a surprise. What if temporarily we left that whole thing off? Just I want to see it compile first before I add that function. All right, that fixed it. It's not going to do anything, right? Because it's not going to call a command. But to fix it temporarily, I remove that command equals business. Now we need to pack our frame and our button. And since there's only one button on the row, we don't need to pick a side. So frame 3 equals, frame 3 dot pack pad X equals 2, comma, pad Y equals 2, or if you were leaving at 20, whatever. And then button dot pack, parentheses in parentheses. All right, there we go. Don't do anything though, because our function isn't defined. We haven't attached a command function to it yet. Well, we'll get there. Anybody have a syntax error before I scroll back, before I scroll up and add our function? Maybe we could create our login function right here and then later cut and paste it. That sounds like a good idea to me. So I need to modify the button creation here. This button line is going to have to make it, going to have to be modified. So text equals login, comma, command equals login, no spaces. And then we're going to add a function, login function. Not really going to do anything. It's just going to print a message. So def login, parentheses in parentheses colon, print logged in, exclamation mark. That's enough to prove that it works. We'll make the login function do something better in a minute. So when I run it, it creates our little login window. That little TK there really is kind of lame. It ought to maybe have a title. I think we could do that when we create the title. Also be neat if it was centered on the screen. I don't want to take forever making all these changes to it, but you know, we can type in something and click login. And what does it do on the shell? If I can find my shell, it prints login, logged in. We're almost done. We're almost done with this. What do we want the login window to do? We want it to pull the name out of the entry fields. And it'd be even better if it displayed a little login message popped up as a dialog on the screen. So let's see if we can get that data out of those entry fields, out of E1 and E2. So first name, or just F name, shorter, equals caps E1 dot lowercase get parentheses in parentheses. L name, not one name, equals E2 dot get parentheses in parentheses. And now we're going to make a string to display. Now, if we were using the print function, I'd just separate everything by commas. But since it needs to be passed in as a string into the message box function, then we're going to actually make the string using the plus sign for concatenation. S equals F name plus quote space quote plus L name plus quote space logged in, end quote. Now let's display that. We're going to use our message box function that we took the trouble of importing up at the top. Message box dot show info parentheses title equals quote login end quote comma message equals S end quote. And let's delete that print statement. We don't need anything sent to the shell. We're using Windows now. All right, so when I type in Jeff Bob here and click login, it says Jeff Bob logged in. We might want to get the password and check to see if the password is equal to something. We could use an if statement. We would use password equals e3.get. Password equals e3.get parentheses in parentheses. And we better check. Now what's our password going to be? Secret. If password equals quote secret end quote colon. Now tab those guys over one level. And we're going to add an else clause that tells them didn't work. And you know how fond I am of copying and pasting. Else colon, and then take those two lines that you tabbed over. We could just type it all in again. S equals F name plus, you know, we don't even need to do all that. Let's just do message box dot show warning, or maybe we even want it to be an error. Show error parentheses title equals quote login end quote comma message equals quote, you don't have to go to the next line, you know why I'm doing that. Message equals invalid password, or password not correct, or some message like that. And then I'm going to back tab once and add an indif just to make my syntax a little bit clearer. I'll bring the code back in a second, but I want to test it out. My password field's not showing up. I didn't make a password field. Did I? All right, well, none of this is going to work then. We need to add a password field, so we're going to have one more line or one more set of stuff. It ought to go above frame 3, but let's say create. I'm changing that comment to create third line of window. And the last one's going to say create fourth line of window. Frame 4 equals quote frame. I'd ask y'all to do this yourself, but nah. Capital E3, whoops, that should be E4. I'm sorry, we're creating the fourth line. Frame 4 is equal to frame window, and then E3 equals entry with a capital E, parentheses, frame 4 in parentheses. Now we need to pack our stuff. Frame 4 dot pack. I didn't create my label. Yeah. We got to create the label. So above E3, L3 equals label, capital L, parentheses, frame 4, comma, text equals quote, password, end quote, in parentheses. And now just like we did before, we need to pack all these things. So frame 4 dot pack, PADX equals 2, PADY equals 2, L3 dot pack, lowercase side equals uppercase left, E3 dot pack, lowercase side equals caps right. Now I really think it's ready to go, but I may have a syntax error in the login function. All right. Really, login and password should be swapped. We might cut and paste the login button so that it appears at the bottom, but this is good enough, right? Bob Roberts password is blah 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 blah. Click login. Invalid password. He changes his password to secret. He clicks login, and it says login. Notice the difference. Saying show error popped up the little red X icon. If we made it show warning, it would show a little yellow caution sign, right? A little caution triangle. And since we use show info, it puts that cute little reassuring thing. Blue circle there. And if they got it right, we might want to destroy the window. If we wanted that to happen, we could come up here and do window.destroy right here. If you feel like it, if you feel like making the window close, or we could use window.withdraw, but window.destroy would let the program continue on. So but I'm not going to do that. If you feel like it, add window.destroy parentheses in parentheses there. I'm going to take that out in the interest of keeping this. Now, if you want the login button to be the bottom of it, just highlight those lines, cut them, and paste them underneath here. But then our numbers are all kind of off and wonky, right? You know, frame 4 and stuff like that. My little lapse there kind of, you know, made a mistake. Now, when I Googled up how to hide the password text, it came up with a way of doing it. Let's test it out. And if it doesn't work, then we're not going to spend any time trying to get it to work. Show equals asterisk. Alrighty. So after we create our password entry, which is E3 here, I hope this works, and if it doesn't, underneath E3.pack, we're going to do E3.configure show equals quote asterisk end quote in parentheses. Yeah, that's cool. It actually works. I'm digging it. All right, I did a lot of typing, and I'm sure that I left people behind. So I'm going to scroll from the top down for the viewers at home, and then I'm going to wander around and help the folks here. We have our import statements. We have our creating of the window. We create the first frame, right? We should have called it frame 1. Then we create the middle line, which is a label saying last name, and an entry field for that. And by the way, cut that login function and paste it above where we create the window. Just highlight all that, cut it and paste it. I'm not going to do it, but feel free, students in class or if you're at home. And then to create the third line of the window and create the fourth line of the window. And when I say line, I kind of mean frame, right? And then main loop. All right. I can't get it all on the screen. This was a lot of coding. Just like I said, creating a user interface takes a lot of code. All right, wandering around, we saw an error that said message box not defined. And so I thought, oh, that's because we didn't have this statement, import message box. We did have that statement. And so if you're getting that at home and you want to get it to work, just change this to print message, or print parentheses S, and change this line to print parentheses quote invalid password, right? Just change this to print statements. All right, I think we're done with that. I hope that was entertaining. More than hoping it was entertaining, I hope that it was educational. Get a little bit of an idea about how graphical user interfaces work. This is a pretty good library for creating graphical user interfaces. I believe that there are other ones as well. This one comes shipped with Python, so you don't have to install anything else to get it to work. All righty. That chewed up more of our time. That leaves less time for lecturing about arrays. We can still get some array lecturing though. That was cool. Worth the time. Thumbs up if you thought that was cool. All right.
Can we set it to lock after many failed attempts?
Yeah. If we wanted to improve this a little bit so that we had like a maximum number of attempts, we could just have a variable that kept, track of the number of login attempts. I almost don't want to get into what that would take. We would have to use a global variable, because if we did not use a global variable, then it would not be able to change it. Why not? Why not? So up above login function, let's create a global variable called attempts equals 0. And then here where it says invalid password, we need to use that variable, but it's a global variable, meaning that we want to be able to change it. So we would do global attempts and then attempts plus equals 1. And then if we had used up too many attempts, we would, lock it somehow. If attempts is greater than max, lock, right. Not going to talk about how to do that. And while we're in it, we may as well destroy the login window, right? The other thing we would want to do is to create a login variable that was set to false. And then when they were logged in successfully, we'd want to set it to true. So something like this. Success equals false, or logged in equals false, or something like that. Oops, why did I type in 0? Success equals false. Now here, if they were logged in successfully, we want to set success equal to true, colon. No colon, sorry. Success equals true, and then we want to destroy our window. Window.destroy. Parentheses in parentheses. And then down there underneath main loop, we could check to see if they ever successfully logged in or not. Let's try this first. I'm not printing out the number of errors, and we should include that. That's useful information. You know, we could just spend the whole lecture on getting this to work perfectly, and I don't mind that. Invalid password. Okay, how about if we get it right? I want to see it. Clear everything? Cool, that worked. So, if our attempts are greater than max, we want to tell them that they've bombed. We ought to also maybe tell them that they've made too many attempts. So how's about this? I'm going to uncomment out that if statement. If attempts greater than max, colon, message box dot show error parentheses title equals quote error end quote comma message equals quote too many attempts made end quote in parentheses, and then we're going to delete the box. Window.destroy. We're going to delete our window. Now we never defined max. We'd want to come up here above the where we were declaring these things. And I really shouldn't call it max because max is a purple word. So I'm going to change that to max underscore attempts equals 3. We give them 3 shots. So I added that above the login function. Max attempts equals 3. I'm going to delete a blank line or two so I can try to get the entire login function on the screen at one time. And this needs to be if attempts greater than max underscore attempts. So we just changed that line. We just added that. We added that line. We added that line. We did a lot, really. We added that line. We added that line. We added that. We added that. Those are all the areas that just changed to my recollection. And underneath attempts equals max attempts, there was a window.destroy. Makes it harder to read if I take that out. Just trust that it's there, huh? All right. I'll bring this code back up when I do another walk around. But pause for a minute because we're going to come here and after window.main loop, we're going to check to see whether they were logged in or not. So if success colon print user is logged in. Do cool stuff. Else colon, I forget if it's exit or quit. We haven't used this. Looks like quit's going to work. It's purple. we might want to put a print message before that. Print parentheses, login attempt failed, exiting program, in quote in parentheses. So we're using some stuff we didn't really show previously. This is the kind of stuff that you'll see in scripting. All right, I'm just going to make several errors. Invalid password, invalid password. I could be using a print statement to tell us that we've exceeded. Too many attempts made. Everything closes. Login attempt failed, exiting program. Okay, that didn't do exactly what I wanted. I didn't want it to pop up a little message. Is there a kill function? Google that real quick. Kill function Python. Exit. But you have to import sys. That's a lot of trouble. We're not gonna mess with that. We're just gonna take that out. Invalid password. All right. I want to see it work, so I'm going to type in secret here, get it to work. Says that I'm logged in. Oh ho ho, login attempt failed, exiting program. Should not have said that. I must have forgotten something. That's interesting. I forgot that success is a global variable. So we're going to have to call it a global variable. We're going to have to insert one more line here. And I'm sorry. What was that? What was your comment?
That comment that was over there was from the previous time.
Okay. So global success. Yeah, you're right. I'm going to run it without making that change. No. All right. So we need to declare that variable as a global variable so we can change its value. Global success. Success equals true. Secret. Logged in. User is logged in. Okay. So this is a successful login function now. If you have these three global variables defined. What is a global variable? It's just those are variables that every function can access. It just so happens that in this language in particular, there's a quirk, which is if you want to change the value of a global variable, you have to do that line first in order to get it to change. That's just Python. Python being a little bit weird. All right. Pause. Help folks. All right, so we may as well put some notes here at the bottom about what we've done. TKINTER is the Python library for creating user interfaces. Can I type? Creating user interfaces. The components displayed are called widgets. Widgets include buttons, label, and what was the other one we used? Entry. And there's also checkboxes, sliders, images, all sorts of things we could do. We create a window, parentheses TK, open parentheses, close parentheses. add a frame, create labels, and guess I'll make that a capital L. Create labels and entry widgets as necessary. Create buttons as necessary. Pack the frame, labels, entries, and buttons. Then call main loop, window.main loop. I think I'm going to number these. We create a window, we add frame, we create labels and widgets as necessary, we create buttons as necessary, we pack the frame, the labels, the entries, and the buttons, and then we call window main loop. And then the last thing is that when we create a button, we specify what function for it to call. Example, B equals button, parentheses, text equals click me, end quote, comma, command equals, quote, no quote, sorry, do something. Which means we need to add a function for it to call. DEF do something, parentheses in parentheses, colon, etc., etc. All right, about the last trick that we used here is a global variable, which we mentioned once or twice, but all right, so global variable, or a global variable, is one, or is defined, or is a variable that is defined outside of all functions, modules, that can be used inside any function. In Python, to change a global variable, you have to also define it in the module. Like this. DEF do something, parentheses, in parentheses, colon, global x, and then we can change its value. X is equal to 100. Now that variable should have been defined outside of the function for that to work, like x is equal to 0. You don't have to do that global x business if it's not going to change the value of it. You only have to use the global keyword if the module actually needs to change the value of the variable. All right, that's a little bit more sophisticated than what we've been doing, but that's okay. We are awesome, and it's worth doing sophisticated stuff. We have used up our class time. So, no homework. Get quizzes done if you haven't done the quizzes already. Tackle the Chapter 6 quiz. Even though we're not completely done with it, you can always read the chapter. Right? You could have two windows open probably, right? One for reading the book, or you can open up the PowerPoint and scroll up and down. You don't have to take the quiz, cold. You're allowed to use your source material. So go ahead and try to get the Chapter 6 quiz done over the weekend. That's your homework. And if there's stuff that we haven't covered adequately, that's okay. We'll finish the chapter on Tuesday, and we'll do some. What have we mentioned about the exam so far?
Originally, I think we were going the 7th?
Did I say the 7th? I'm not sure we're going to be ready for the 7th. Looks like it may be the 9th. What did I mention it and not? All right, guys. Here's the way it's going to work. Final. We're going to take an exam on next Thursday. If you can't be here that day, it's okay. The way it's going to work is take it, and if you do well, then you get to skip the final. If you don't do well, or as well as you want, and you want to take the final to replace your lowest score, then you'll come back in on finals week to do it. I'm going to have to look up whether we meet on Tuesdays or Thursdays for our final. I think it's Tuesday, but I'll post that. I just don't want to take the time to do that right now when people need to leave. And I haven't made the Dropbox yet. And guys who are doing this at home, I'll mention this in the notes, but it's okay if you didn't get this working. And in fact, it's okay if you didn't type in a single thing. All right, and I'm sorry that I'm making people leave without having to upload it. Without having uploaded, I'll probably just make it optional to have uploaded it. But it's there. So if you did it on your laptop and you want to upload it at home or something, it's there.